He aligns himself with the truth, and it's time for you to choose a side. You're listening to Alex Jones.
Oh, they're so good.
Oh, they're so sweet.
We love our Somalis. We love our Muslims. Oh, they're so good.
Oh, they're so sweet. You know, they're going to rue the day they made that piece over at Super Deluxe. I haven't checked today. It was like 10 million views yesterday. But, you know, that's not a big deal, 10 million views. Paul and I used to, on Facebook, just about 6 months ago, have videos with 15, 25, 35, 37 million views. And then I did a video about it, and they just went bloop, 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 and got rid of like 25 videos. Just because they don't like us having those trophies, it doesn't matter. It still happened. It still went on. And again, it's not about us having the most views. But despite all they're trying to do to block us, they can't block you. And 90% of the comments are more on Super Deluxe, on Facebook, on YouTube. I mean, I got to admit, I've spent hours reading them because they're so good, to watch the leftists converting and going, I hated Alex Jones. I believed all the hype. But I went to his show and actually listened to it, and it's great. Why did I believe it? And I go to these people's handles. I've checked like 50 of them. I mean, literally. They have got long-term globalist minion trendy backgrounds. These aren't people trolling saying I used to be a liberal or a trendy, now I'm not. It's people saying, man, I finally went and listened to Alex Jones, and I love this guy. That's victory. And just on Facebook, they tell me now, on one version, 7.1 million views. As of Saturday, they said they had 2 million downloads at Super Deluxe. Who knows what it is now? And on YouTube, it's in the millions. So you add all that together, it's well over 10 million right now. And again, the reason it's important is it's not normally our demographic of libertarians, conservatives, people that don't live in mommy's basement. A lot of the comments I saw were, it's true, I've been in my mom's basement, I'm 30, I want out of it. 92% or 93% of Hillary voters, you can Google it, of SJWs, that's mainstream news, 93%, it's like 92.7. In fact, people won't believe me, just type it in. 92+% of SJWs live with their parents is the headline. And they did surveys. And it's just incredible to see them saying, I'm breaking the conditioning, it's amazing, it's true, I want out of my mommy's basement. And it's okay if you live in your parents' basement. A lot of folks do it to save money or whatever. In this economy, I can't blame you. It's just that with conservatives and libertarians, it's like 5%. But let's go out to break again with the EU saying they're going to shuttle the Muslims in with a new Coast Guard, which they'll also use to harry and harass EU shipping. Here it is.
Migration. Amnesty International and other human rights organizations have accused the Coast Guards for abusing the migrants and
you have not done enough to lick our booties.
Detainee centers. Are you aware of this, and did you discuss about it? Thank you.
You have not kissed my booty enough.
This is exactly the reason
Give
why
me more,
we're working
bitch.
so much with the IOM and the UNHCR to guarantee that they have access to these centers where living conditions.
We will bring more in, of course. It'll be nice for you.
The living conditions.
Oh,
of the
that's so
migrants, to protect their
good.
lives
Oh,
and their
that's so
rights.
sweet.
As I said, actually, as High Commissioner Grandi said, and I share his words, to change the very same logic of detention.
Oh, to change the
Which
logic.
is not the logic
Europe
of the European
collapsing,
Union
no one
with the
come
UN
for
system,
tourism, roads shut down,
follows.
Muslims robbing, raping
And
everywhere.
to assist
We bring
the
more in, we
migrants which are
assist.
already inside
And then
Libya,
the Navy
in
will
all
control
possible
the...
ways.
See, the
In
nation states have their own
humanitarian
navies.
terms, but also
And
with
so
assisted
they're
voluntary
saying the
returns.
nation states are
We've
shipping our
heard
preciouses
terrible
back.
stories about that.
We will stop that.
We will
bring our invasion friends in to help dominate you.
Migrants that managed.
I will wear burqa. My daughter will have her wee-wees chopped off. It is liberal. We come right back.
That nobody should...
All right, ladies and gentlemen, for the next 20 minutes or so, former congressman, medical doctor, really the granddaddy of the whole modern nationalist reawakening movement, Ron Paul is our guest. And all over the world, the libertarian constitutional reawakening of Barry Goldwater, and then right through to Ronald Reagan to a certain extent, and then, of course, Ron Paul has been has been absolutely amazing. So it's such an exciting time to be alive. So Ron Paul is down in South Texas. There's a big thunderstorm coming in, and their power just went out. So as soon as they're able to reconnect, we will do that with them. They were literally like about to come on live with us, and they said, thunderstorm overhead, and then it knocked the power out. So looks like Imperial troops have entered the base, but we will try to get hooked back up with the former congressman here in a moment to talk about the big picture and what's happening around the country and around the world. But look at this headline. Tourism up under Trump, collapses in Europe following terror and migrant invasion. And I was making the point that there are 7 unvetted nations that have failed governments. And Somalia hasn't had a real government in decades. It's beyond something out of, dystopic sci-fi road warrior films. And every day or two, a Somali stabs somebody in Europe or the U.S. or Canada, or attacks somebody because they're not wearing a burqa, or beats somebody up because they're drinking beer, or there's a new case of a woman walking her dogs. Breitbart has an article, and then she gets attacked because they said the dogs are unclean. I actually once was walking my dog in a park when I was in college, and a Muslim came over and said dogs were unclean. I thought it was a joke. There it is, dog walker, hospitalized after attack by Somalian migrant who said dogs are unclean. So every time I report on Somalis attacking people and not being integrated into our society, I'm going to play the clip that the media made fun of where I said, oh, we love our Somalis. We love our Muslims too.
We love our Muslims. Oh, they're so good.
Oh, they're so sweet. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. But tourism up under Trump, collapses in Europe. It's down 80-something% in the last decade, and most of that is in just the last few years. Now, you have to ask yourself, why are they sacrificing everything, tourism, sovereignty, on the backs of this? Why is the EU military announcing it's going to take over the nation states? Because it's unelected and the people want out of it. Why is the EU bureaucracy announcing they're going to create a new Coast Guard? That's a navy to stop the nation states of Europe that occasionally send back the boats coming across the Mediterranean and then land the people back in North Africa or back in the Middle East. Well, I played part of the clip. I'm going to play it all right now. EU foreign policy, European Coast Guard to protect migrants. So the European Coast Guard is going to get in there with the other navies and make sure, because they openly criticize in the press conference, they say some of these EU countries aren't being nice enough to the Islamic invaders that the EU's been advertising to invade Europe. So you have the EU openly aiding it to bring down Europe, and that's what the Hungarian and the Romanian presidents and the Polish presidents and now other presidents are saying. Bill Gates said that's an invasion of Europe. That's what's going on. And Soros funds the 100-foot Zodiac boats 24 hours a day that go back and forth, bringing them in, and they throw people out of their own houses. We have video of it, and put the illegals into their houses. So let's go ahead and go to that clip from the press conference. The foreign policy chief of the European Union said at a press conference that Frontex, the European Coast Guard, should protect migrants attempting to cross the Mediterranean and North Africa and the Middle East to Europe. There you go. Protect them from the nation states. Oh, you want to get out of the EU? You never voted to enter it? We're going to invade you with the military. And we're going to start by confronting your ships. The EU is a hostile power now over Europe. Here's the clip.
Migration. Amnesty International and other human rights organizations have accused the Coast Guards for abusing the migrants and sending to unknown detainee centers. Are you aware of this, and did you discuss about it? Thank you.
This is exactly the reason why we are working so much with the IOM and the UNHCR to guarantee that they have access to these centers where living conditions appear to be inhuman, to improve the living conditions of the migrants, to protect their lives and their rights. As I said, actually, as High Commissioner Grandi said, and I share his words, to change the very same logic of detention, which is not the logic the European Union or the UN system follows, and to assist the stranded migrants which are already inside Libya in all possible ways, in humanitarian terms, but also with assisted volunteers.
Please. The UN goes into Burma and slaughters 10,000 people for their land. They go into Africa, do the same thing. But again, they're saying the EU and the UN work together under the framework against the nation states of Europe. And they're, quote, not following our system. So they're going to show you how to follow their system. They're going to advertise that Europe's open. They're going to advertise there's free money, free housing, and free women. That's advertised. They're going to bring them in and let Islamic clerics lead them to not assimilate, just like Linda Sarsour says, and then to carry out jihad. And they call it sexual jihad, raping women. And then EU dirtbags like Peter Sutherland and his minions are going to quarterback the whole operation. Here it is.
We have, and I have personally heard from migrants that managed to cross stories of slavery, inhuman conditions of men and women, in particular women, that nobody should not only live, but nobody should even listen to. So the work the European Union is doing with the UN agencies, with the international NGOs, is exactly to protect the migrants, try to protect the migrants, and we are asking our Libyan friends to help us helping the international organizations to have full access, to improve the living conditions. Okay,
so there you have the EU saying if European countries don't pick up Muslims from Africa and the Middle East coming across the Mediterranean, that their ships are going to start stopping them and then helping the Muslims come into Europe under the UN auspices. This is the UN and the EU taking over Europe. Now, former Congressman Ron Paul has been warning of global government for decades, and now it's here. And as Europe tries to pull out of the EU, and as European countries try to reassess their sovereignty, the EU is threatening to march in their EU military, and it's beginning with their EU Navy saying they're going to start basically stopping the ships from returning people. This is outrageous. This is a great place to start with Ron Paul. Mr. Paul, you warned of this a long time ago, Doctor.
Yeah, we shouldn't be surprised. It was set up. A lot of people even predicted this way back in 1945 when they started this mess. But, you know, in a way, it's similar to what we fight here at home because most of the sovereignty was supposed to be left with the states and not with the federal government. But we fight that all the time, and we've been losing that battle. They run everything at the federal level. But now federal governments, and right now we're talking about European governments, they have sacrificed too much of their liberties. And it wasn't an accident. It wasn't an unintended consequence. It was an intended consequence of the people like Soros and the other individuals who believe in world government. But the big problem is it's not a voluntary world government. It's a world government based on authoritarianism and ruthlessness and control and the destruction of the sovereignty of the individual as well as the individual countries, and that's what we're facing today. And it's going to get a lot worse. But it's great that some of these countries are finally saying, hey, maybe we got to stand up to this, but it's not going to go away easily.
I know you're not about getting credit, but people have to realize that being one person in the right against a sea of lies ends up historically being effective, and people should really take heart how far we've come exposing authoritarian crony capitalism and globalism, the true force on this planet. Back when you first went to Congress, in the 80s for a stint, and later back in the 90s, you routinely didn't get any co-sponsors. Now many of your bills have passed. Most people know the Federal Reserve is quasi-public-private. They're aware of all this. Take Dr. Michael Kaufman that died last month. He was the first person to expose Agenda 21 and global zoning and global standards being created by corporations to control nation states. All of that now being exposed. Trump pulling out of the carbon tax, the climate accords, the TPP. Can you speak as a true visionary trailblazer about where you see the state of the world now and the positives?
Well, I think we're coming to a climactic end, and it's going to be very dangerous. But the ducks are lining up. The people are realizing how their liberties are being undermined. The Europeans want to be Europeans, and they don't want to be run by international governments. So I think if you just look casually at the political situation around the world, it looks like we haven't accomplished much. We're worse off than ever. But if you look at what I think you were alluding to is the intellectual fight going on, the ideological fight, and that's where we're having influence. Many people know that I speak a lot on college campuses, and in spite of the reports you get from college campuses how bad cultural Marxism is, there's still a lot of people on the campus, a lot of young people who are starting to realize they're paying these bills. And there's a wake-up call for the young people, too, because they're getting out with all they have by living up to this. They're getting out with all this debt. But I think we're living at a time like it was like the Soviets were ending in the 80s, and it was coming to an end, but nobody believed the Soviet system could collapse overnight and have an amazing change. And yet I think we're at the end of this interventionism, this world empire making, Keynesian economics, central banking, and the more difficult it gets for those who are in charge, the more ruthless they get. So we have a big battle ahead of us. We're in the midst of the battle, but I think we win because their system doesn't work. That's why we beat communism, not because we had more nukes and not because we had a nuclear war. It was a totally failed system, and I think those who are defending what we have today are defending a system that they can't salvage. That's why there's a stalemate in Congress. They haven't given up on it. They think they can tinker around with government medicine, not realizing that the end is here, and the sooner we recognize that, the better. But I think that's where we're winning, but we have a ways to go.
I agree. It's the best of times, worst of times. The political elites have dug in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, and in here, from Venezuela, to what we see happening in Nigeria, to what's happening in the Middle East, to what's happening in the UK, and the empire of corrupt crony capitalism is striking back, allied with radical Islam, allied with other collectivist models, but it's failing. So when we hear we have the most unproductive Congress in 164 years, it was good to be unproductive blocking Obama. Now that Trump is trying to repeal Obamacare with your son, Senator Paul, and is trying to cut taxes and is trying to, in my view, to save the economy, they are really being obstructionists and have their heels dug in. I mean, is that basically what I got from what you said?
Yeah, that's it. But I think where we're weakest and where we don't do the best job is we know what's wrong, we know what has to go, and there's a good group speaking out against it. But what is not readily apparent is what do you substitute for it? And that's why we have to emphasize the principles of liberty and making this an individual thing. And liberty comes to individuals. And what are the principles of private property and sound money? So to substitute, most people in this country know that Obamacare failed. It is failed, and no matter whether they leave it there or not, it's always going to fail. But we don't have enough people in the country willing to, they don't understand and realize if they want good medical care, they have to, admit the truth. Government medical care, like Obamacare, just doesn't work. So our biggest job is to make it very clear what we believe in and what we need, and also that you can't tinker with what we have. If you and I were in charge of the Federal Reserve, we can't do any better in charge of the Federal Reserve. We want to get rid of the Federal Reserve.
Exactly.
And tell them why you have markets. So you don't want better managers. I remember in high school they used to talk about all we need is a businessman ahead of the post office, and we're still talking about that. We need a businessman running medical care. No, we don't need bureaucrats.
No, we don't need $1.48 going to Bezos for every package he ships from taxpayers to undercut the rest of the free market. We need him to sink or swim. And behind all these big giant monopolies, we always find government backing it up. It's totally disgusting, like Carlos Slim, a foreigner, making $10 billion in profit in the 8 years of Obama on the stinking Obama phone. Dr. Paul, let me ask you this question then. I agree intellectually there is a firestorm of awakening as collectivism, again, proves it's a nightmare scenario, and as people that bought into it find out it's a fraud. But what about the new talking point that I've seen from Congressman Quigley, I've seen from Congresswoman Maxine Waters, I've seen it from all of them. I even heard Howard Stern. Randomly, I was tuning to the dial yesterday, and he said, you don't talk to Russians, and no one's allowed to talk to them. The new talking point is, quote, Bob Baer said it on CNN, they're all saying it, if you talk to a Russian, period, you're a spy and should be arrested. I mean, that is a new word-for-word talking point, with CNN having hosts saying, quote, we're at war with Russia, we need to, you know, attack them. There is this hysteria where the dying globalist program is pointing at you and me, and they've said this about you, Trump, that we somehow get our orders from the Russians. This is so dangerous. Where is this going? It's globalism that's the outside force, isn't it?
Yes, and these are the same people who condemn us for even saying that we ought to at least trade with and talk with a country like Russia. These are the same people who love the Soviets. You know, this group of people you mentioned, they champion the Soviets. And, you know, we were close allies in many things, and even in that system, I don't think that Kennedy did the wrong thing when we had the confrontation over Cuba, that they at least talked, so we didn't exchange nuclear weapons. There are times when you do talk to even some of these bad people, but we're not dealing with the Soviets. They're accusing us of talking to Russians as if they are worse than the Soviets, and they're just very fearful. They're losing, and they're thrashing out, and they have to. They can't defend their positions because they're totally failing. So they have to destroy our viewpoints and showing that we don't care. We don't care about poor people. We don't care about sick people, and that's all they have. But if we can present our case in a very positive fashion, what should be substituted for what we have, because we already have the vacuum. That is the problem. There's a vacuum out there in Washington, and it's just a struggle for power, and that's why some of the Republican leadership are pretty weak. I mean, they don't offer much difference because you've seen the Republicans over these many decades. Just think back when we had prescription drug program, we had a complete Republican.
Sure, the Republican leadership helped write Obamacare, and of course, as a medical doctor, you've exposed that with precision. In the last few minutes we have, sir, looking big picture then, you've traveled the world. We see the libertarian awakening in Eastern Europe that, again, you helped start, not trying to blow smoke at you. We've been over there. Our reporters have been there. You're a rock star over in Europe. That signifies that humanity really wants freedom. And the more people have been under communism or socialism, the more they recognize that the American free market system, never fully realized, is still much better than what we face. So rallying the troops out there, I think what you're saying is we're at a crossroads, there's a vacuum. Every person has to be more involved than ever, waking people up, being engaged, supporting independent media like Ron Paul Liberty Report and what you're doing, and understanding we're turning the tide, but we're in a very, very dangerous climate because the authoritarians are cornered and are flailing.
Yeah, and I think that if people are offered, and I know this for young people, if they're offered freedom and responsibility and prosperity and peace, they're going to accept it. But I saw a write-up the other day of a poll made that I was fascinated with because I believe it to be true, that one of the many reasons why Hillary lost was the fact that she was construed as a militant, an authoritarian who was a promoter of war, and that Trump came across much better because he says, why do we have to provoke Russia? And I don't like it when he sort of drifts away from that position, but he was the one that represented those of us who would.
Well, sure, they're bullying him back into that. That's why they're saying the new talking point is we're not allowed to even talk to Russia beyond even the worst Cold War. Then let me ask you this. Pulling back, where do you expect this authoritarianism to go? Because it's only intensifying.
Yeah, well, that's hard to tell, but I think we're more likely to see a lot of violence before we see the acknowledgement that our side is winning, and they will start backing off. So I think the whole thing has to come down. So they never fixed communism. It had to collapse. So I think our system has to collapse, and that's why people should be prepared. And there's all ways of being prepared, for your own safety and your.
I agree. We've only got a minute left. Two quick questions. Do you think the EU will go down before the United States, being more socialist, A? And B, it seems like he's not perfect, but he's embattled right now and is carrying the flag, and to some extent for Americana. It seems like you've warmed a little bit more to Trump.
You know, I think that the Europeans will go down, whether they dissolve. I think that what they'll do is reestablish their countries again. I always argued when they were starting the EU was I don't see how it could work, because I thought, well, you know, it's not. At least we were supposed to at one time have one language. But over there, I never thought the Italians would get along with the Spanish and this sort of thing. And instead of recognize their individuality,
Sure.
they were going to push.
They don't have a
together.
shared ethos. What about Trump?
I always predict. Well, I think Trump is up against the wall because the authoritarians are there. I'm afraid that the neocons are still in style, and he has a few people in his administration that I don't particularly trust, because I think they're too close to the neocons. But it's going to be up to him to make the decision, and even though that he might have to give in to them a little bit, he has to stand firm. But they're all around him. They're every place, and you can't cave into the New York Times and the Washington Post.
Exactly. Ron Paul, thank you.
That's what he is up and down.
Powerful.
GCN Radio.
Let's get serious here, ladies and gentlemen. That was a powerful Ron Paul interview, wasn't it? One reason I've been in a better mood is I've 100% quit drinking. 100%. And I'm quite a ways into no drinking. And I've been exercising more. And even though I'm not a heavy drinker, I think drinking messes up my sleep patterns. And so I just sleep better when I don't drink, period. And I exercise better. So that's one reason I'm being a little bit goofy. This is what happens when I'm completely 100% sober. Not that I drink on air, but you know what I mean. It affects your neurological systems. If you drink a bottle of wine at night, the next day you got a headache, you're kind of grumpy. You have brain fog, even if you are taking Brain Force and BioTrue Selenium from InfoWarsLife.com. You see, this is what my voice really sounds like now. Unless I kind of talk fast and try to talk in a higher pitch voice, then it kind of sounds like this, which is scary, because I'm wondering what my voice is going to sound like someday. Sometimes at night now, I'll be out at an event or out at friends' houses, and they'll say, does it hurt when you talk? Because by nighttime, my voice is really toad-like. So we may get to the point where I'm communicating on air like, who's the physicist, Stephen Hawking, who talks to the robot? Maybe we'll just do that. Hell, they're already giving the troops brain chips. I reported on that like 15 years ago. People didn't believe it, then sure enough, it came out. The exact type of brain chips we were talking about were being rolled out. First as, quote, anti-PTSD and then anti-depression. But the truth is they're just getting everybody ready for biomechanical soldiers. And the CIA has even admitted to the Washington Post through cartoons and popular culture, they're preparing everyone for a microchipped future. And suddenly, from Fox News to ABC News, we have news clips where they go, soon everyone will have a microchip. That's just the way it is. Just like, oh, everything you're doing is being surveilled. Your appliances are watching and listening to you. But that makes Alex Jones even more kooky, that he predicted it all specifically, exactly as it would happen. And I'd love to give myself credit that I had a big, fat, juicy Palantir or crystal ball or oracle's orb in my hands, but I didn't. In 1977, the Pentagon developed a plan that was declassified in 2000, was reclassified in 2002. I put it in my book, Descent into Tyranny, free online, now out of print. And they said to save the earth and finally have no more crime, we're going to get everybody progressively into computers and then smaller devices and then brain implants and retinal implants. And then finally, we will live in tanks from birth, and our own body heat will heat the computer systems as batteries, and we will all live a virtual reality life. You may have heard of that. It's called The Matrix. It came out in 1999. That was art imitating a DARPA plan, not the other way around. We're not imitating art now with this stuff coming out. This was always the plan and was cooked up. And I'm not saying we're going to specifically go that way, but that's what they have cooked up. They have all these articles about, oh, in 1,000 years you'll live in a tank and have an avatar virtual body. No, they plan to do it as soon as they can. They've already got robots that are controlled by your cerebral cortex and the rest of it, but they plan to then convince you to live in a tank and then have that transfer. Because, the tank will have a lower carbon footprint. See, they want to herd you into the carbon footprint, and then you will opt into going into the tank because there'll be all these tax incentives and things if you do. And then you'll have access to all the computer programs and things. It'll give you unlimited ecstasy and unlimited VR. And that's why Time Warner has a slogan through their trendy division. They know nobody's watching CNN anymore. So they have come out and they have things like Super Deluxe, where they say their slogan is, nothing's real, it's all virtual reality. Telling you that this universe isn't real, that something else created it. There is no God, but something superhuman created this, and the mathematical and radio telescopes show in the dark matter there's an outside force many times more powerful, holding all of this together and holding gravity artificially in place. And that the elites want to have you break out of the VR by entering their new universe. I think somebody I read about before was in a reality and wanted to break away and create their own reality and said, I am God, I am more beautiful, I am greater. And God said, oh, really? You're stuck on this planet, and I'm going to put myself back to day one. I'm going to put a creature on the planet in my image. I'm going to put you up against my larva, and let's see if you can beat the larval form of God. If you want to go from a scientific perspective, that's what the elites actually believe. They believe Lucifer is the advanced God. It's giving them the off-world technology to build their breakaway civilization, but they've got to kill all of us first because we're profane and ugly and bad. Our fellow humans believe they have to merge with machines and merge with animals and merge with other life to create the super creature that AI is going to weave together. And that once they've done that, they will then have this breakaway transcendent moment, and then they'll become God. When what is really going on is hiding in plain view right there in every ancient text, not just the Bible. So, breakaway creation tells the creator, I'm God, I'm going to overthrow you. And God says, you can't even overthrow something made in my image. You can't even overthrow people running around in caves. Let's see how it works out with them. And now you see what they built to try to capture us, this prison on this planet. But the devil couldn't even build it himself. He had to get us to build our own cage. But because we built our own cage, we built back doors into it. Lucifer thinks he built back doors. We subconsciously built back doors. Do you think the devil knows he was just sent here to test us? No, they're too arrogant. You see the spirit of the devil in the enemy. They're too arrogant to ever admit they're being beaten. They're too arrogant to ever admit they're up against intelligences hundreds of times more powerful than theirs. The devil can't even take on embryonic humanity and beat us. And that's these people's God? A God that wants to kidnap and rape children? A God that wants to mutate children? A God that wants to kill humans and make us ugly because it's so insecure and pathetic. And that's the spirit of the world. It is the spirit of the devil. And whether you believe in the devil or not, the devil believes in you, and it is manifest. It is real. But there is no God. There is no nothing. We're on a planet. Nothing's fantastical. Play your video games. Play your VR. Play your fantasy football. Just don't be in the real world because it's not real. No, it's real. Your great-grandparents were real. You're real. Your children are real. Your husband's real. Your wife's real. Your experience is real. The stars are real. The moon's real. The fish in the sea, the birds in the air, the plants, it's all real. And they want to tell you that the computers and the virtual realities that they've created that are nothing but electricity, zeros and ones in a false system, a dream. They want to tell you a dream is real and make you believe the dream can deliver you into nirvana when it is the reality of the living dream. The genetic dream, the shared experience over space-time with our species, time traveling through our genetic replications into the future. And no one will tell you any of this. The enemy hates me because I know the information. And the enemy's panicking because the information is being opened up now. And they're in a rush to try to get as many people into their meat grinder as they can, as many people into their Hollywood MSM sports combine. They said 30 years ago, by 2025, they'd have more combat robots and more combat aircraft that were autonomous drone working on AI algorithms than they would human. And the Pentagon is on schedule. Autonomous robots programmed by our loving friends who can't even contain their psychotic forms, like Jeff Bezos, Mark Zucker, and the rest of these people. They have turned themselves over, and they are beasts. And what does Zucker say about you? He goes, I can't believe the users trust me. They're so stupid. They're dumb effers. And he walks around glaring the most evil, weak, pathetic, fallen, Gollum-like creature with his own employees on their knees before him in giant ceremonies, and they don't even know they are on their knees bound and their souls gagged with hoods over their heads, being fed whatever he lets in through the keyhole. And he walks like a god. You're no god, Zucker. You had to put them into a false reality so they would believe you are a god. You're not even a man. And God is going to break you. Know this, Zucker, you will never transcend. You will never. You will die like every other man. You will face the great judgment. You will be brought low. You will be brought down to be humble. You will be unified. You will be completed. You will be equalized. You will join everyone else. Every knee will bow, son. But for people like you, you're going to be crushed first. And all your arrogance will be poured out. Everyone should hit their knees and thank God you're not associated with Zucker. Everyone should hit your knees and thank God you're not associated with Hastert. Everyone should hit their knees and thank God you're not associated with Nancy Pelosi or Prince Charles or Ted Turner. Everyone should thank God every minute you don't come from the filth of the earth. I have a lot of clips I need to get to. We also need to fund our operation. Caveman, which is the very best, and it is the nation's bestseller now. Bone broth formula from high quality chicken bones with the turmeric and the bee pollen and everything else integrated in. Everybody knows Grandma said, get your chicken noodle soup. Well, I mean, it's some ridiculous amount. Each serving's like, when it comes to the nutrients, you get some ridiculous amount of chicken soup bowls. I mean, it's just over the top. And that's not counting all the turmeric and the bee pollen and just all the rest of it. The chaga mushroom. InfoWarsLive.com is 25% off. Been sold out for months. I'm having to stop the specials on Brain Force, because we're about to sell out of that. So 30% off is over on that. Free shipping extends throughout the month. But Super Male, Super Female, Survival Shield X2, Secret 12, DNA Force, it's all 20 to 40% off. But that's going to have to end as well because Super Male and X2 is about to sell out. But it should just be a few weeks till more of that gets back in. But if you want to take advantage of those sales, they're about to end. But I said sales would go through the month of July. So I'm going to have next Monday or so another list of some of the other supplements that we do have in stock that'll be discounted for you next week. But thank you all for the support. InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com, or 888-253-3139. That's 888-253-3139. Or again, call toll-free. Some of the other distributors and places out there carry our stuff as well, but it's always best to get it through us because Amazon sells counterfeits, we know for a fact. But it's okay for Bezos to sell counterfeits from China of our products. You know, that's all right. He's Bezos, you know. Anybody else sells supplements, they're evil and bad. But the anointed Bezos, and Zucker, and all the rest of these people, let's worship you, great ones. Just thank you for your ugly spirits. You smell so bad. Just thank you for everything you are, you filth. Rotting maggots, self-propelled zombies. So we're going to go to break and come back, but when you do fund the operation, you are absolutely attacking the globalists viciously and savagely, but more important than funding us, pray for us and spread the articles and the videos because they block us on Google, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. They admit they're doing it. Google admits they've got multi-million-dollar contracts out to block our news. I mean, it's just everywhere, but they can't stop you from spreading the links by hand and telling folks about the local affiliates and for just praying for us. And I'm praying for you. And we're all in this together. So you're amazing. You're incredible. I don't say that to build you up. You know it's true. If you love justice and you love God, we are one for eternity. We're already together. That's why the enemy hates us, because they can feel it, they can see it, they want to extinguish it because we're torturing them. All right, let's get serious because I want to take your phone calls in the next hour. Paul Joseph Watson's hosting the fourth. And I've got so many clips and so much news. I just committed to myself to start trying to cover more of the news. But it is fun to pontificate about intergalactic infestations, isn't it? Watch the media have fun with that. But they always back off real quick because everybody instinctively already knows, don't they? Before I go any further, let's get into El Presidente Trump. Totally delivered. I just tell the truth here. He's delivered on breaking the back of globalism, getting the economy going, optimism, so many things. The wall has begun in Texas. 63% decrease in illegals coming across. It was 40-something. It's incredible. But the Federal Reserve has announced they're going to massively start increasing interest rates the next year, bigger than they had said. That started hurting the economy. That started cutting back factory orders, and that started hurting the dollar. And then they're trying to say, oh, look, Trump's whole agenda is in trouble if he can't repeal Obamacare right now. It took Obama 2 years to get it passed and then 4 more years to get it implemented. We've just been enjoying it the last 2 years, 2.5 years. The nightmare that is the can't keep your doctor, increase prices, big insurance companies laughing all the way to the bank. But Trump has come out and just said, listen, let the whole thing just fail. And he's absolutely right. And then let the states deal with it, because we had problems before, just like with education, with so much government money in it, it drove up prices. And now it's big government and big corporations controlling healthcare. It's even worse. The answer is just kill it. Let's go ahead and roll that clip.
We've had a lot of victories, but we haven't had a victory on healthcare. We're disappointed. I am very disappointed because, again, even as a civilian, for 7 years I've been hearing about healthcare. And I've been hearing about repeal and replace. And Obamacare is a total disaster. Some states had over a 200% increase, a 200% increase in their premiums. And their deductibles are through the roof. It's an absolute disaster. And I think you'll also agree that I've been saying for a long time, let Obamacare fail, and then everybody's going to have to come together and fix it and come up with a new plan, and a plan that's really good for the people with much lower premiums, much lower costs, and much better protection I've been saying that, Mike, I think you'll agree, for a long time. Let Obamacare fail. It'll be a lot easier. And I think we're probably in that position where we'll just let Obamacare fail. We're not going to own it. I'm not going to own it. I can tell you the Republicans are not going to own it. We'll let Obamacare fail, and then the Democrats are going to come to us, and they're going to say, how do we fix it? How do we fix it?
He's amazing.
Or how do we come up with a new plan?
He said when he got inaugurated, he said, it's the right thing to do. They own it, but I'm going to try to repeal it. But if they block me with the Republican establishment, then they're going to own it. But I'm going to do my best to repeal it. And he worked with Rand Paul and others to get a better bill. The first version was bad. Second wasn't good. Third was a lot better. They won't do it. You own it then. And then it'll just absolutely fall apart, rape people into 2018. The Democrats wanted it. Democratic voters will get the gang raping they wanted. And then we'll have another landslide and get a bunch of patriots in and replace that sucker. But you want to get raped, you're going to get raped. He tried his best, but you don't want it. So now you get the gang raping.